Good morning and welcome on board another edition of the program, The Papers on Canal de English. My name is Lesley Fombuh and I'm delighted to be your host this morning. The bi-weekly, the Post this morning captions on the FACO land-grabbing saga. The story says tormented senior police superintendent resigns. Details on the story says senior superintendent of police Helen Dina Isoka, regional head of control service in the Southwest region, has resigned from the police force. You can read more on page 4 of the paper this morning. The Cameroon People's Democratic Movement reorganization met in scores settling corruption. Details on the story says as the deadline to the CPDM reorganization exercise in the littoral region draws near, the race is not only becoming fierce but also characterized by scores settling. You can read more on page 2 of the paper this morning. Mayors urge government to speed up decentralization process. We are still on page 2 of the Post this morning. Details on the story says mayors of the Mezam division in the Northwest region have decried the snail pace of decentralization and urged government to speed up the process. You can read more on page 2 of the paper this morning. Cameroon forest gross value not accounted for. You can read more of that story on page 8 of the Post this morning. Another paper, The Star, this morning says government announces rise in state budget, tax increase feared. Details on the story says new state budget soars by 500 billion francs CFA in 2016. Feka Food sacks Lion coach, appoints Cameroonians. Details on the story says news of the dismissal of indomitable Lions trainer Volker Finke last Friday took many Cameroonians by surprise but left many rejoicing. You can read more on page 2 of the paper this morning. The story says Alexandra Bellinga has been appointed the interim coach. UN warns about increasing violence in Cameroon. Details on the story says the United Nations and Chief Stephen O'Brien has warned that escalating violence in northern Cameroon combined with an influx of refugees from Nigeria and the Central African Republic is placing immense strain on local communities already struggling to survive. The Green Vision this morning says refugees insecurity threaten Cameroon's food security. Details on the story says the flood of over 300,000 refugees from the Central African Republic and Nigeria to Cameroon has led to fears of induced food security in the country. You can read more on page 3 of the Green Vision. That is today's edition. Another paper, Press, says Camera is now ready to function. Details on the story says the company has invested 13.5 billion francs CFA recently. You can read more on page 6 and 7 of the paper this morning. A call to boycott cement, that's on page 7 of Le Messager this morning. Details on the story says the Consumers League of Cameroon is calling for a reduction in the price of cement. You can read more on page 7 of Le Messager this morning. Le Messager also visits the Volker Finke saga, saying Alexander Bellinga and Jean-Cap Bonaventure will replace the German technician. You can read more on page 12 of the paper this morning. Well, that's all we gathered for you for the first part of this program. We now move on to the second part, that is focused on looking at what the papers actually said, that is analyzing the content of the papers. Good morning once more, Elie Smith.
Good morning.
Yes, what caught your attention this morning?
Well, what caught my attention is the article on the Post whereby a senior police superintendent has been suspended from work.
Yes.
In fact, I think on the brink of being dismissed.
Yes.
Simply because she has done her job properly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is your take on that story? My
take is that I think these are things that often happen, but that when you have the courage to do your job professionally, sometimes you have some hurdles, and those hurdles doesn't often come externally. They are mostly within where you are working. Because her only crime is because she was investigating a problem of land grabbing by government officials in the Southwest, which is something we have been decrying here, because people should not use their position in order to win or grab land from people. And you know, it's a very controversial issue. Yes. Because there was a time where we had this Bakweri Land Claim Commission that was had a problem with the CDC. Yes. How come now that CDC has conceded land for them and then some individuals, because he is a governor, a government, whatever, and goes now and grab land, and the indigenes are going to suffer. I think it is something that the government of Cameroon has to take that into consideration.
Yes, the CPDM reorganization is still making news, Mr. Elie Smith, and this time around we are made to understand that a CPDM reorganization in the littoral is characterized by score settling. What's your take on that?
Well, it's not surprising. We saw a similar thing in the Northwest, I think so, if I'm not wrong, and in other parts of Cameroon where the reorganization took place. It appeared that most people who were to be the arbiters decided to become the players, because maybe they felt that it is going to be much more lucrative to be as a player and not to take the role that they've had. It also called into question the credibility of the CPDM in itself. It showed that it is a party that has gotten no ideology, and that most people who are member of the CPDM are member of the CPDM simply because they are wanting, or they are looking for some position somewhere, which means that they are not real militants, because if they were militants, I don't see why they should be fighting. Reorganization is good. It's a good thing for any political formation.
Mr. Elie, are you sure that at the end of the day we are going to have those who are supposed to be there? Because when we see what is going on, it's like the money bags are going to carry the day, like I said the other day.
Sure, the money bags are going to carry the day, and it is not a good thing for the CPDM in itself, which means that if you have at the head of a party somebody who doesn't have the support of the grassroots, it's certain that during the forthcoming elections, people who were not happy will certainly not vote for them, and which means that they are going to have tough time winning elections in this country.
Yes, another story that caught our attention this morning is the fact that the state budget of 2016 has witnessed an increase, and the papers are saying that it might be a burden for the taxpayer.
Sure, because if you could recall, my question was, where will they get the money from?
Yes.
And we were speculating, and I thought that, while looking at the international economy today, there's nowhere they can rely on having more money from commodities that we are exporting. The only solution will be taxing people the more, which is not a good thing. When you tax people a lot, it means that people who want to create jobs will not create jobs. We are not going to be competitive. I think it's once again a wrong approach if we really want our country and our economy to be much more buoyant and competitive, and also fight against poverty, fight against corruption and things like that.
Don't you feel like coming out with this kind of budget, the Minister of Finance knows what he's doing? Because when we just keep saying that it's going to put more weight on the taxpayer, don't you feel like they have a clear-cut plan?
Sure, certainly. Well, they do have a clear-cut plan, but it is going to be wrong to impose more taxes on people who are already crumbling because of a lot of taxes. I think the good way in every society is, if economically, that if you want to attract investors or you want to encourage indigenous or national investors, is to have less tax. Because can you imagine a person who wants to open, let's say, a hair salon or whatever, if he has to pay an amount of money twice that he was paying initially, it means that he is going to resist or desist from investing. And when he desists from investing, it means that he's not going to create more jobs. For if you take into parallel, in a country like Germany, what is creating jobs in Germany are not large industries, but small and medium-sized enterprises. And lesser taxes are healthy for an economy that wants to grow, but more taxes are inimical to the growth of an economy, and it is not good for Cameroon to be.
So what should be done presently? Reduce the budget, or what should be done?
What should be done is to adapt your budget according to your economic realities. It is not miracle. You don't need to come out from London School of Economics or from Stanford to understand that if you have a budget that doesn't reflect the reality of your economy, then it is bound to fail.
Yes.
It is bound to fail. I think you have to readjust, come back to earth, put a clear-cut economic program, and your budget should reflect the economic reality of your country. We are facing an economic crisis or a readjustment globally. Our economy is a commodity-based economy, which is affected directly by what is happening globally. And what is happening globally today is that the price of oil is down, the price of more or major commodities are down. What can we do to increase the revenue of the country? Yes. First of all, is to fight corruption, and then create a level playing field that will attract investors, and that will encourage Cameroonian investors also to invest and create wealth and create jobs.
Yes, Mr. Elie Smith, we learned this morning that Volker Finke has been sacked. The paper has also focused on that. The news came over the weekend. What is your take on that? Are Cameroonians finally satisfied?
I think Cameroonians are satisfied because Cameroonians had a problem with the the former Cameroonian head coach,
yes,
because certainly he did not deliver as Cameroonians would have wanted. So it is something that Cameroonians were expecting, and at a long last, because of Tombi Aroko, the Cameroonians are happy. Now, the good thing with me is that we have at the head of Cameroon a Cameroonian who is a trainer, because this thing of employing foreigners, especially Europeans, I think is long overdue. We have seen countries, for example, Nigeria got their African Cup of Nations, the second one, because they have an indigenous trainer. Ivory Coast first lifted the African Cup of Nations because they had Yao Martial, who was an Ivorian, and I don't see the reason why we should always be going to Europe to get coaches.
Mr. Elie, he's an interim coach. He has not been confirmed yet. Are we not still going to have maybe we use him like we used the other guy and then abandon him and then appoint a white man?
Unfortunately, you know, in Cameroon we still have that inferiority complex whereby we think that the only good person, the only competent person should be a white person. On the contrary, we have very competent Cameroonians. If the Cameroonians were not good, if Africans were not good, you will not have at the head of the Chadian national team a Cameroonian. You will not have at the head of a Nigerian team a Nigerian. You will not have at the head of the South African team a South African. Cameroon should do the same, because we have a pool of talented players and former players waiting just to be used.
Can Alexander Bellinga deliver the goods? Can he do that?
Personally, I don't know him, but I have heard very good information, very good things about him, which means that if he has the free hands to operate, then he will deliver. The problem is that the manner in which we respect foreign coaches, when it comes to national coaches, we tend to despise them. We tend to put hurdles on their trajectory. I think this time around, if we allow him a free hand, I think he's going to be good. Why shouldn't he be good? I think he was the coach of a Cameroonian team called Sablé de Batier.
What has he achieved so far? Because we need to look at his background. Is he competent for this job?
I think he's competent. If you want to ask me what he has achieved so far, the only thing I know is that he took over a second-class team called Sablé de Batier, brought it up to the first division, and even qualified Sablé de Batier for the Champions League in 2000.
We're talking about international football. We're talking about the local league here.
Sure, you have to start from somewhere. You have to start from somewhere. If we don't give him an opportunity, he will not have the time, because having passed through the local levels, he seemed to understand the Cameroonian reality better. He has honed his trade, and I think the only thing with him now is to give an opportunity to show us what he knows best or what he can do for the Cameroonian side.
Well, let's hope that he's going to deliver the goods, because, you know, Cameroonians are expecting so much from him after the disgrace we had last time. So let's look at another story. Refugees from the Central African Republic might cause a problem of food shortage in the country. You know, with the problems in neighboring Nigeria and the Central African Republic, they are flocking into our country. And the papers are saying this morning that it might cause a food shortage.
Sure, it's certainly going to cause a strain, because already in Cameroon, we do proud ourselves to be self-sufficient, but it's not true, because in the greater northern part of the country, we have always had a problem of inadequacy of food supply and food production. Now, when you have about 300,000 Nigerian refugees coming there, and you have the same equal number, about 100 or 200 from Central African Republic, it's certain that it is going to have a strain on our food production. Well, and it is an opportunity for the government to try to construct what we used to call the farm-to-market roads to facilitate products or produce from farms to get to the towns and eventually get to the refugees. But then we shall also need to have support from the international community.
You know, last week, one of the papers captioned on the fact that the Central African Republic refugees in the country were going to pose an insecurity problem. That is, the Evol said something like that.
Yes, it was unfair.
Yes.
That is kind of trying to put a stigma on a specific or particular group of people. We need to have a kind of leniency. We need to have a kind of compassion. The refugees from Central African Republic are not coming to our country because they want to. they are having a difficult situation and they're coming to our country. That paper, I think, was Oral Plus that said,
yes,
vote a vol. It
yes,
was really unfair to try to categorize, generalize a particular set of people that they are thieves. No. In every community, you have good people as well as bad people. And professionally, it's not good because you can now try to whip a kind of xenophobia against a particular group of people, especially against Central African, which is unfair. And I think it is unprofessional on the part of Oral Plus.
Maybe it was an investigative story. They came out with the truth. The truth must be spoken at times, even if it's bitter.
It is true. It is true. But in some case, you have to weigh the good as well as the bad.
Yes.
If you project a headline saying that this particular group of people are bad, don't you think of the consequences that you are going to generate?
You think of the radio milk calling stuff?
In Rwanda,
yes,
what it costs. So I think the only thing the paper had to do, you can say, well, they are going to vote, but within this community, it has been reported that we have a number of these taking place. But when you just generalize a group of people, he has to understand that there are also a number of Cameroonians outside. Will he be happy that they say all Cameroonians are fair men? He will not be happy. And that is what some people do think. But we don't have to behave the way others act. I think we have to be compassionate and show our sympathy to our brothers from Central African republics and sisters.
Mr. Elie, what should be done to solve this problem of food shortage? What should be done? Because it's something very serious. It's
something very serious. The first thing I think is, for example, to facilitate the construction of farm-to-market roads within Cameroon, because there are some regions in Cameroon where you have a lot of produce rotting out in farms because you cannot take them to the cities. And secondly, I think Cameroon needs the support of the international community to withstand or, to survive at this particular point in time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Elie Smith, for respecting a rendezvous. Those are the topics we gathered for our listeners today. Thank you very much for your respecting rendezvous.
You're welcome, sir.
And viewers, we want to thank you for your kind attention. Let's take another rendezvous for tomorrow. Goodbye.